Hey guys, David Frangioni back in the studio for Then and Now. Here we go, episode 2. Today, we are going to talk about the Teletronics LA-2A. It's an iconic compressor, and they've reissued it in hardware, and they've done different models of it in software. We're going to look at 2 of the LA-2A emulations today in plugins, one by Avid. It used to be Bomb Factory, so it's called the BF-2A. It's been around for well over 20 years as a plugin. And then UAD, who have a rich history because the inventor of the LA-2A actually is part of and has been part of Universal Audio. The LA-2A being one of the most important and iconic pieces of outboard gear ever made. It's one of the best sounding compressors for so many applications. I love it on vocals, bass, lead instruments, and drums. So we're going to look at it today on lead vocal and bass drum and snare drum. So let's come along for the ride. Here we go, guys. The song that we're going to look at today is Right in the Middle by Star Race. It's also the song I used on the first Then and Now when we talked about pull text, but we're talking about the LA-2A today. So let me call up, this is the Universal Audio LA-2A. This is their version of it. You can see all the LA-2A emulators have peak reduction and gain control, right? And then you have other controls that are unique to some of the plugins, but we're just going to focus on the then part of the plugin now, because the original one only had peak reduction and gain and the meter in the middle. So that's what we're going to use for this example. I'm going to solo the bass drum and no compressor in, and then here's the Teletronics, the UAD. You can hear it gets a lot fatter and bigger. Now I'm going to bypass it, and then I'm going to go to the Bomb Factory, the BF-2A, which Avid acquired, so now it's the Avid BF-2A. And it's similar, but not as fat. So I like the sound of it, but I like the sound of this one better. So then we're going to go to the snare. I'm going to unbypass this. And then here comes the snare drum. And I'm going to put in the UAD Teletronics. Again, bigger. You hear more of the snare, just more of the shell overall. And then I'm going to go to the Avid BF-2A. A little more compressed sounding. Again, not quite as big. And then I'm going to put the kick and the snare in, and I'm going to put both LA-2As in from Teletronics. And then I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to kick the song in, and you'll hear how the drums cut through. Now if I mute the LA-2A, if I bypass it, the drums just shrink a little and you don't quite get the same. All right, so now we're gonna listen to Right in the Middle, Julio Star Race singing. I love his voice, he's got an awesome voice. I love the song, so this is always a pleasure. There's a lot of vocalists, you can't really solo the vocal like this, and it sounds great no matter what, but Julio is one of those guys that you can because he's such a great singer. So first, we're gonna play some of it with no LA-2A of any kind on it, and then I'm gonna kick the Teletronics in. You'll hear the vocals start to get warm and pop out. Bypassed. And you hear with that, when we're hitting at 5 dB, 6 dB, it just gets warmer and fatter. That's one of the things that's magical about an LA-2A, just the way it compresses. It's just very musical sounding. So now we're going to bypass that. We're going to play this again, and we're going to have the Avid BF-2A. And here we go, in and out of bypass on that. So it really sounds good, but I like the LA-2A Teletronics. On both examples of drums, kick, snare, and vocal, the UAD, the LA-2A wins. So I get asked all the time about analog versus digital warmth. And for those who haven't used a lot of analog equipment, right? Because originally all we had was analog recording and analog equipment, right? The tape recorder, the console, all the outboard gear, everything was analog, right? 50s, 60s, 70s. And then it started to transition and we started to slowly integrate digital. First in the 70s with digital effects, and then that went to digital tape, digital consoles, etc. And now everything in the box digitally, and we're living in a digital world. But if you didn't have experience or haven't spent a lot of time in the analog world, what are we chasing with analog warmth? And that is that because analog uses, in most cases, actual analog tape that has a certain saturation to the sound that's just inherent in the signal path and the way that the sound is played back, recorded and played back on the tape. It's called hitting the tape, where it actually has a signature sound, the level and how it's going to tape and then how you play it back. Now you take that through an analog console, now you have another place where you can use certain types of equalizers and compressors. It's really saturation and a warmth that's added by, it's almost like a soft, curve that kind of beefs up the bottom and rolls off the top enough that it's musically what people describe as warm sounding, right? So warm is not a sound, so to speak, in the sense that, it's a temperature, but it's actually used to describe sound when the bottom gets bigger and the top kind of very musically rolls off and everything just kind of sits. So everything has a body to it, whereas digital, it's described as harsh sounding in some cases, meaning that it doesn't sound musical and it doesn't have a tonality to what the sound is like. So specifically, let's take this lead vocal. And we have DAD tape. Right? So if I take this and I change the type of tape, here's 15 ips, noisy. Now, different type of noise reduction. Now I'll go to 30 ips, which is the highest quality analog tape, and you can actually hear the noise right now before I even hit play. And then when I go to noiseless, the noise is gone. So this plugin actually emulates the analog signal path of the noise that's introduced in the signal path. I'm going to take solo off. And I'm going to bypass it. It's subtle if you're not A-Bing it, but when it's in there, it really adds a warmth and a color that on every track that I add that to, and this is what we used with Kiss and Ariana Grande and, Clint Moore and Diana Ross and a whole number of things that I've mixed that have come from different decades. And all the time when I use plugins like Tape or Valve by Dewey, and there are others that I have as well, those are not the only ones, but they are examples of adding an analog element to the signal path And that means we're giving it some warmth. Maybe we're adding a little bit of noise to it to just give it a certain sound that we're after. Now, the question is then or now, because we have unlimited amounts of LA-2As in the box, and we have a finite number of hardware LA-2As, either vintage or the reissues that are made. They're thousands of dollars each, and they do sound great. And I've owned them and have A/B'd them. So I'm going to tell you my results of that. And the result is now. Believe it or not, as much as I love and cherish the sound of an LA-2A, an original one, where all of this came from, I prefer to use the plugin for the flexibility. The difference in sound quality is not significant enough inside of most mixes where you can hear the difference to the point where you want to deal with the recall, you want to deal with analog audio paths, and you want to deal with the additional noise that it introduces. Can you say anything across the board is always a then or a now? In my opinion, no. It's not always one or the other, because music is different all the time, and the choices that you make are based on that music. But in owning a studio, having my own studio, I have to make decisions. What gear am I going to have in the racks, and what gear do I want to focus on in the box? So that's the decision. It's the most of the time decision, and then you deal with it the best you can all of the time. So that's how I come to the then or the now, because outboard gear is, it's a lot to patch and to recall and to maintain, especially vintage gear. So it really has to be worth it, in my opinion. And most of all, what do I hear inside the mix? So then or now, LA-2A, I go with now. And my favorite plugin in that family of LA-2A plugins is the originator, UAD, Universal Audio, with their Teletronics LA-2A plugin. I'm David Frangioni. See you guys next time on Then and Now.